They rolled in champagne like we'd just cured cancer. Confetti poppers, cupcakes with the logo stamped on them, the CFO wiping tears for reasons no one could explain. Maybe his stock options matured. I stood there holding a flimsy plastic flute, a forced grin glued to my face, while our creation, the thing we pieced together in garages, server closets, and caffeine-fueled blackout weekends, was consumed whole by a corporate serpent in a $312 million buyout. Applause filled the room. I tried not to scream. The new CEO, a man whose empathy seemed like something he rehearsed in the mirror, draped an arm over me and dubbed me the genius behind the brand. He mispronounced our product twice, then handed me a company-branded fleece like I'd just pledged his fraternity. "Excited to have you for the next chapter," he said. I nodded politely, already reminding myself to start printing documents. The real ones. The important ones. What they never understood was this. The founders weren't just for show. We weren't quirky mascots to trot out for PR. We were the pulse, the blueprint, the oddballs who knew exactly why one legacy script had to pause for 12 milliseconds, or the whole notification engine would implode. They thought they bought a fortress, but the moat, the drawbridge, the master key, that was us. Buried deep in the labyrinth of acquisition paperwork, crammed between non-compete clauses and retention bonuses, sat one line. A single clause that cost them everything. If any founder is terminated without cause within 24 months of acquisition, all proprietary IP reverts to the founding entity, effective immediately. That line existed thanks to 2 bottles of Pinot Noir, a very stubborn lawyer named Darlene, and me, bloodshot at 2 a.m., fighting tooth and nail to protect the soul of what we had built. I wasn't counting on betrayal. I was counting on laziness. But both showed up in spades. And maybe this isn't the perfect place to say it, right in the middle of a tale about corporate treachery, but if you've stuck with me this far, please help me hit 10,000 subscribers. Right now, 97% of people just listen without clicking. That's like showing up at a potluck with an empty plate and devouring all the potato salad. One tap and you'll keep this chaos engine running. Anyway, the press release read like wedding vows. Together we'll soar to new heights. Shared vision. Unparalleled synergy. The reality? 14-hour onboarding marathons where the new leadership explained slide by slide how to run our own company back to us. They called it integration. We called it death by PowerPoint. Still, I played along. Smiled at the all-hands. Let them rename our Slack channels. Didn't flinch when they sent a junior project manager to trail me, tasked with extracting institutional knowledge, like my brain was a PDF waiting to be exported. But I knew. I knew exactly how many months we had. I knew that clause. I knew they'd never bother to read it, buried where it was, hidden under appendices and footnotes. They thought they were buying a machine. What they didn't see was the grenade pin they'd just pulled. I should have expected they'd never read it. Instead, consultants showed up like a rash, spreading quickly, impossible to ignore, always dressed in some shade of beige. 3 of them at first, flown in from New York with names that sounded like prescription drugs. Chadwick, Sloan, Everett. They didn't build things. They optimized processes, which really meant turning conversations into monologues and replacing instinct with metrics no one cared about. Their first play, vision realignment. 2 weeks of mandatory bonding games, trust falls, and slide decks teaching us how to pivot toward synergy. The same synergy we'd been mastering for 10 years without their interference. One slide literally showed a lighthouse with the words innovation anchored in agility slapped across it, like something from a dentist's waiting room poster. By the 3rd week, our whiteboards were gone, replaced with collaboration zones filled with beanbags no one touched. They issued new laptops preloaded with monitoring software that tracked typing speed and flagged idle time. As though creativity could be measured in keystrokes. As though they knew what it took to architect a self-healing database schema from the ground up. Then came the hierarchy. Middle managers with clipboards, new titles like Strategic Enablement Officer and Workflow Evangelist. I now had a boss who wore loafers without socks and called me young lady in meetings. I'm 42. I wrote the core code he butchered while fumbling through a client pitch. One by one they sidelined us. Mia, my co-founder, who once presented our compression protocol at DEF CON, was shoved into user empathy research, which meant fabricating customer personas for an intern to review. Nick, our CTO, had to justify every single code commit with Jira tickets that took longer to file than the fixes themselves. And me? I became a prop. A mascot. They paraded me into investor meetings, but never let me speak. Let the numbers tell the story, Sloan would say, mangling our growth charts and giving credit for Q2's success to some marketing pivot. Instead of the brutal two-server migration, I survived over Memorial Day weekend. At first I argued, corrected them in meetings, fought tooth and nail for accuracy, for vision, for integrity. But somewhere around week 6 I stopped. Let them talk. Let them rename our roadmap the success spiral. Let them pretend they were steering something they didn't even understand. Because here's the truth. It's always simpler to let a fool step straight into a trap than to waste time warning them where the floor gives way. So I smiled, nodded, even thanked them once for their fresh perspective. Each time they brushed off my input, I logged it. Each time they rewrote sections of the code without looping us in, I saved a record. They were digging their own grave, and I wasn't about to stop them. Frustrated? Absolutely. But not panicked, not bitter, just quiet. The kind of silence that builds before a valve finally blows. I had 16 months and some spare change left. The clock was already ticking. It happened on a Tuesday. Mid-morning. The sun was bright outside, but inside the war room it was dead still. Mia didn't even get a warning. One moment we were reviewing stress logs from the weekend patch, and the next, her calendar went empty and her Slack icon turned into that cold little X. Tombstone gray. I knew that color. Final logout. She came back 10 minutes later, white envelope clutched in her hand, eyes shattered like broken glass. No HR. No manager. Just a security contractor keeping 6 careful feet of distance, like he was waiting for her to explode. He said I was redundant, she whispered, dropping the envelope onto my desk like it scorched her fingers. Redundant. She was the one who built the compression engine. The one still being licensed across half of Asia. And all they gave her was a severance packet barely 6 pages long. One page screamed non-disparagement clause in 14-point bold. Another instructed her to exit quietly without accessing company systems. As if she were about to start smashing servers with a desk lamp. She didn't cry. Mia never cries. She just looked around, the office she helped paint, helped wire, christened with greasy takeout boxes and caffeine-soaked late nights, and said, "Guess I'm the first." That's when it hit me. The clause. The one buried deep, the one nobody bothered to read, the one I'd fought for like my life depended on it. It didn't trigger if I was fired alone. It activated the moment any of us were cut loose. Mia was gone. That was one of 3 keys turned. I didn't run to legal. I didn't call darling. I didn't storm through the office waving a red flag. I just closed my laptop, reached under my desk, and pulled out the old external drive I hadn't touched in over a year. Matte black. Dusty. Locked down like Fort Knox. I didn't steal code. Not even a semicolon. What I copied were things you can't stick in version control. Archived boardroom emails, timestamped system blueprints signed with my name, Slack threads between Mia and me chronicling the early build process. Proof. Not for the courtroom, for the public. They wanted to erase us. Fine. But you can't erase what's already notarized, uploaded, redundantly backed up, and primed on a dead man's switch. I labeled the folder for after, and encrypted it 3 times over. Then I leaned back in my chair and stared at Mia's seat, empty now, still turning slightly from when she'd stood up. I wasn't sad. I was protective. Protective of her. Protective of what we'd built. Protective of the pieces of myself buried in every line of that product. Through weekends lost, birthdays missed, partners abandoned because the database refused to sync. This wasn't grief. This was pause. A breath drawn before movement. They thought they could dismantle us piece by piece. But some machines break worse when you pull out just one gear. The replacement arrived quickly. Bryce. 27. Stanford MBA. Hair sharp enough to cut drywall, with the emotional depth of a LinkedIn post. He greeted me with a handshake that screamed, "My dad golfs with the board." "Hey, really excited to absorb your knowledge," he said, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. "I'll be running product from here on out. Hope we can make some magic." I don't remember blinking. I just remember realizing they'd swapped me for a man who uses synergy as a verb. Within a week, I was cut from the roadmap meetings. No explanation, no notice, just no invite. I discovered the backend had been restructured only when the dashboard started spitting 53 errors during live client demos. No one told me. No one asked for review. They shoved code straight into production like toddlers joyriding a school bus. Feature flags flipped at random. A/B tests launched without segmentation. One build even rolled back to a pre-2019 version, dragging the analytics package into the abyss. Clients started bombarding support. Support, in turn, forwarded everything to me, because demoted or not, I was still the only one who knew where the skeletons were buried in that code. Bryce pointed fingers at legacy spaghetti. Called it technical debt from the old guard. That became the new slur. I saw it pop up in Slack threads, little barbs in company-wide channels. We're modernizing, one product designer bragged. Another wrote, not everyone's keeping up. Then came, let's stop worshipping sacred cows. Sacred cows. That's what they called the foundation of the system. The very system running the damn company. Nick tried pushing back in a cross-functional meeting, explaining how the shiny new tracking module was breaking sessions and leaking permissions. Bryce cut him off with, thanks for the history lesson, but we're moving forward. I didn't argue. Didn't pull rank. Didn't point to the exact line where his genius refactor shattered the user model. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote, time, date, bug ID. Every protocol they ignored, I logged. Every release that collapsed, I screenshotted. When clients complained about missing features, I archived the threads and noted which PM fed them canned responses. Cold anger is sharper than rage. It doesn't burn, it chills. Makes you watch calmly while they thrash, whispering, you did this to yourselves. They shoved me out of the spotlight. Fine. Enjoy center stage. Enjoy the bugs. Enjoy your frantic investor decks. I kept showing up. Smiling. Nodding. Taking notes like I was the intern now. But every smile was a blade they handed me. Every bug was another brick in the wall closing in around them. I didn't tighten the rope. They were already hanging themselves. I just watched. And waited. The email finally came. They called it a realignment of strategic direction. No meeting, no explanation, no voice, just a calendar invite titled Offboarding Touchpoint dropped into my inbox at 7:04 a.m. Like a dead bird left on the doorstep. When I arrived, the room was staged, laptop open, forms printed, a company logo water bottle like a farewell gift from a cult. Bryce wasn't there. Of course not. HR sent someone else. Janice or Janet, or something soft with AJ. She spoke in phrases like transition and gratitude for your leadership, as if we were laying a pet to rest instead of beheading a legacy. No one mentioned the bugs. No one brought up the disaster call from Friday when the API quietly dropped 2/3 of order confirmations into nothingness. They didn't even bother pretending this was about performance. Just restructuring. Just growth. Words that sounded like progress but reeked of rot. They slid the papers across like a dinner check. I read every line. Not because I didn't already know what they said, but because I wanted them to see me reading. Slow. Calm. Pen tapping once for every lie. Then I signed. One clean stroke. Smiled wide enough to make Janice inhale. This won't be the last you hear from me. I said, not as a threat but as a courtesy. And I meant it. Not how. Just when. They didn't escort me out. There weren't any guards, no dramatic send-off, just stillness, sharp and clinical. My badge still lit green when I pressed it to the reader. I stood for a moment in the lobby, letting the weight of it sink in. The wall carried the company's emblem, chrome polished to a mirror shine, glowing corporate blue behind it, staring back at me, almost accusatory. I stared right into it. Day one, I whispered. Because that's what it was. Mia had been the first to go. I followed. Nick was next in line, his NDA up for renewal in 2 weeks, and he wasn't bothering to mask his contempt anymore. But none of that mattered now. My firing had woken something that had been sleeping in the contract. A clause, airtight, immediate, binding. If a founder was dismissed without cause within 24 months of acquisition, All proprietary intellectual property reverted to the original founders. Effective instantly. It had been 16 months and 2 days. That's how long it took them to sabotage themselves. I left the building with only a backpack, a thin sheaf of documents, and a smile that never touched my eyes. My eyes weren't grieving. They were measuring, calculating. The countdown had begun. At first, the company seemed fine. They kept posting launch updates on LinkedIn, fresh client wins, team selfies, hashtags bragging about hashtag innovation in motion. Bryce even gave a talk at some startup brunch, scaling with speed, boasting about cutting legacy friction. Like we were barnacles slowing down his yacht of success. I watched all of it from my kitchen table, coffee steaming, cat purring across my lap. No need to log in. Their vanity was all public. They shipped updates, rolled out features, launched a sleek new UI that shattered half the accessibility tools we'd spent half a year refining. They signed 2 enterprise clients and then proudly demoed real-time integration before QA had even touched it. The demo collapsed twice. But the unraveling didn't happen in one blow. It crept in. A flicker at first. API keys failing without explanation. Then webhooks freezing, timing out. Clients noticed. A logistics partner emailed, panicked. Our shipments aren't syncing. Is your system down? Support brushed it aside. Temporary issue. DNS hiccup. Try clearing your cache. But the bugs spread like rot. One retailer's inventory rolled back to 2021. Another lost every purchase history record. The automated safeguards meant to catch those failures? Bryce had shut them off weeks earlier during one of his agility sprints. By week 3, tickets had tripled, then quadrupled. Slack channels detonated with chaos. Who has access to schema backups? Why are integrations breaking across environments? Why aren't the tokens refreshing? That last question. I already knew the answer. Because those tokens weren't theirs anymore. The clause hadn't only transferred code and documentation. It handed me the infrastructure. The backbone. The entire system. The operating layers were mine now legally. They were still running on a body that no longer belonged to them, calling functions they had no rights to. I stayed silent. No press release. No scorched earth lawsuit. Just quiet. Calculated. Satisfying quiet. Nick pinged me with a single line when their status page first showed a partial outage. They're still digging. Just realized the shovel's gone. Middle managers scrambled, calling emergency syncs. I recognized the signs, the jittery emoji reactions, the midnight emails pleading with engineers to check one more thing. Hard to fix a system that isn't yours anymore. I didn't gloat. Didn't call anyone. Didn't even leak the clause. Revenge tastes better with patience. Let them slap patches on symptoms, roll out hotfixes blind. They still hadn't grasped the truth. Not fully. But they would. It began with a screenshot. Someone, an intern, maybe a fed-up junior dev, leaked snippets of Slack messages onto Blind. Nothing damning, just raw corporate panic. The escalation channel in Ops, timestamp 2:14 a.m. Does anyone know why staging keys won't provision? Can't access schema backups. Who owns offboarding protocols? Did legal ever update the rights to the API layer? That last line. That was the splinter sliding under the skin. The thread started pulling loose. Employees piled in anonymously, blame games, conspiracies. One poor soul even suggested the founders had cursed the system. Not a curse. A contract. By day 3 of the outage, someone finally checked the acquisition agreement again. Not a fresh lawyer. One of the originals, the kind who treated fine print as garnish. Buried in contingency triggers, page 58 of Appendix 3, she found it. If any original founder is terminated without cause within 24 months, all rights to proprietary source code, underlying IP, authentication infrastructure, data schemas, and derivative works revert immediately to the founding entity, as defined in Clause 3.7a. No waiting period. No appeals. No do-overs. I can only imagine the chill in that boardroom. Waxon, the shiny new CEO, probably staring at a contract he'd signed without even skimming. $1 million deal dissolving right in his grip. Their attorney scrambled, proof of which landed straight in my old inbox, the one still tied to my founder's email. Messages dripping with polite panic. We'd love to reconnect. Perhaps we could discuss transitional options? Would you consider a short-term licensing deal while we restructure? There might have been a misinterpretation. I ignored them. They tried calling. The line went to a voicemail that said, "If this is about something you broke, try turning it off and reread the terms you skipped." What they never checked, what they should have checked, was that our original shell company from 2013 wasn't the entity that mattered anymore. 2 months before they cut me loose, I'd quietly filed a brand new LLC in Delaware. Different name, new domain, same core, this time with Mia and Nick as co-founders. They couldn't reach us because we weren't going back. We'd already left, already rebuilding, already creating stability while their empire crumbled. They didn't just forfeit intellectual property. They lost credibility. Vendors, partners, clients, everyone now saw the truth. The new leadership didn't even own the product they were peddling. Justice doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it's just a signature buried on page 58. By the time their fourth outage hit TechCrunch headlines, our alpha builds were already humming. We didn't resurrect the old platform, we evolved it. We stripped it to the frame, rebuilt the engine to glide instead of grind. No stitched-together mess, no bureaucratic overhead, just clean, fast code. At first, we worked from Nick's garage. Later, a small loft above a coffee roastery, air thick with ambition and over-roasted beans. Mia handled product relaunch. I shaped the architecture. Nick ran infrastructure, and charmed everyone he spoke to. Just the three of us, back in sync. No investors breathing down our necks, no glossy decks, no trust fall retreats. Just late nights, greasy takeout, and laughter that felt like repair. Funny thing about fire, it clears the brush. Clients smelled the smoke and started looking for exits. Quiet emails. Careful DMs. "Hey, are you building something new? We're desperate for stability. 6 integrations down in 2 weeks. Anything you can offer." We didn't pitch. We didn't even mention the company that buried us. We just answered, "Yes. We're building. Yes. It supports your existing workflows. Yes. You can be on board before month's end. No theatrics. No poaching. Just a natural pullback to gravity." Even some of the old team returned. Engineers, designers, customer support leads. The ones who still believed in what we'd made the first time. They didn't need promises. They only asked if they could help. We called the new platform Lantern. Light in the dark. A tribute to both the chaos we survived and the clarity we chased. Every line of code was defiance. Every feature a correction. We launched beta with 11 clients. By month 234, investors came knocking again, but now on our terms. That spring, I recorded a podcast. The host asked about the acquisition, the firing, the rebound. I smiled. Disruption isn't always about breaking things. Sometimes it's about noticing what collapses once you leave. No names. No shade. Just truth with teeth. We weren't chasing revenge. It had already arrived. This was resurrection. Renewal through contract. Proof that we weren't just right. We were prepared. Then came the Thursday outage. Prime login hours. Dashboards froze. Logistics APIs spewed errors. E-commerce pipelines dead silent. Not even a warning. Just nothing, like someone yanked the plug mid-sentence. By noon, Twitter was ablaze. Anyone else seeing total platform failure? Lost 8 hours of transactions. Support's ghosting. Is the company even alive? Their pristine status page bled red boxes across every region. 2 hours later, a single-sentence statement. We are investigating a critical disruption to core systems. Translation. We don't know who owns the thing we broke. Inside chaos. Executives dragged into emergency Zooms. Engineers scrambling to recompile code they no longer had the rights to touch. License keys revoked. Infrastructure access gone. No backups. No rollback plan. Clients bailed. Some quietly. Some loudly. One partner issued a public note. We no longer believe the vendor maintains operational control of its platform. That same day, Wired ran the headline that tanked their stock. Fortune 500 loses core platform after firing founders. IP clause ignored. The piece was merciless, quoting the clause line by line, charting every blunder with surgical clarity. Former engineers spoke. Clients spoke. Even a board member admitted they never understood the clause's weight. By market close, their IPO filing was withdrawn. 3 directors quit within 2 days. Investors demanded audits. The CEO, Mr. Empathy himself, got grilled on CNBC. Did you even read the acquisition papers? He fumbled something about misinterpretation, about unexpected founder actions. Unexpected, like we were a freak weather event. I watched from my new office. Sunlit, quiet, pale wood floors. Big windows. A lone fern I kept forgetting to water. The TV hummed low as the anchor moved on. I didn't cheer. Didn't toast. Just sipped my coffee and let the silence settle. This wasn't triumph. It was inevitability. They thought they bought us. What they really purchased was our comeback. Thanks for tuning in, Cubicle Warriors. Hit subscribe, unless you're my old boss. Then good luck. The coffee pot always wins.